What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla stock, why Tesla in the market saw a nice pump in the morning before getting a big rejection as the market got a massive rug pull, and how this ended up affecting Tesla. I'm also going to talk about some critical levels to watch for going into next week, what the shorts are doing to the markets and Tesla, and what you should be watching for as a Tesla investor. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about what's going on with the Tesla stock, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm personally not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon. It ends in just about 2 weeks, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so looking at Tesla, Tesla was down 2.11% for the day. In the morning, we saw something very interesting play out on SPY. We had this inverse head and shoulders like pattern that was developing in the very beginning. And this ultimately ended up failing for us, right? So we had this, once again, this inverse head and shoulders, right? We had this bullish divergence. SPY got this nice pump. We were calling this in the morning. We ended up seeing this pump. But then I also warned you guys that we're going to be watching the 30 minutes 200 EMA at the time, and we're going to be watching if this ends up holding or not, and also our key resistance levels. So if we kept breaking above this, we could have seen the market continuing to push up, but if we rejected, we'd likely see some downside. And the downside I would have been expecting would be like a retest of this like previous resistance, which would be support around this like 451.3 area, and if that broke, you'd be watching like 450. Now, if 450 ended up breaking, 448 would be our next major support, and if that fell, this would turn a lot more bearish. I warned you guys about 448 in the very beginning of the day during my pre-market video on SPY. If we ended up breaking that, that would be our bearish signal. But I didn't get a chance to actually come to you guys intraday when this move was actually happening. I was very busy at the time, but I'm now available, and seeing how the market continued to drop, it looked very weak. It still is dropping in the after hours. And I just want to mention that we have to see SPY try to get above 448 again for there to be hope for the bulls. Otherwise, if it breaks the low it made and continues to downtrend, we're going to be going all the way down to about 442 on SPY. There's going to be more downside coming. Now, why is the market selling off like this? Well, the truth is, I did not see any specific piece of news to cause that to happen. This was pure manipulation. This was pure just like price action. There wasn't like one news that came out during this time. It just happened almost like on its own based off what on earth these market makers institutions were trying to do and based off the fake out that they caused in the morning. So this was just them kind of pulling liquidity from retail and other institutions in the very beginning. A lot of people started buying at these levels, and they were the ones who were selling at the very top. And we got this big sell order during the final like 3 hours. This insane amount of selling, and that made up the majority of the volume, causing the market to just fall. This is also high volume selling that happened right here, which is a very bearish signal. You can see how the volume came up like right here. When all of this happened, this caused the entire market to come tumbling down. It was also led by Apple. If you look at Apple, this thing was holding up for the majority of the day. We actually saw institutions buying into Apple at 185. They're ready to buy it and buy it and buy it. And once Apple got this big sell-off, right here with the high volume sell-off, that's what helped trigger the market to sell off even more. Apple did play a role in this, but the news coming out for Apple was just bearish from the very beginning. There were institutions talking about how Apple has a very weak looking smartphone market. Things are going to decline for the Macs and revenue is going to decline and just this and that. It was already making the headlines from the beginning. And instead of holding 185, Apple ended up breaking below it. So then we had our next level around 182.5. And if that failed us, then, once again, Apple would just continue to sink down to about 182. Then we had like 181.6 and 180. Because Apple sold off like this did play a role in the market slowing down. But some tickers out there tried to hold up. I mean, if you look at Amazon, Amazon tried to hold up. It also started to sell off at the very end. You could see this crazy price action that took place. The whole market was just trying to get faked out. They were trying to fake out as many people as possible with the inverse head and shoulder. And simultaneously, now that the market ended up picking this direction, I'm going to break down why this is happening. I think what's still making the headlines would be this Fitch downgrade news that came out as the US long-term rating went down from a AAA rating to a AA plus. And that is pretty, significant news, at least for the markets. And the timing of this was quite suspicious. I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow. I just want to mention that all this stuff that's going on is quite crazy. Now, for Tesla, I want to talk about a couple of things. There were some negative headlines that came out for Tesla as well. On a seasonality basis, Tesla tends to not be that strong for Fridays. It's only green about 49% of the time, almost 50-50, but a little bit less than that. July tends to be a relatively weak month for Tesla as well. They're only green 42% of the time. The majority of the time, they're red. And then August, as we approach August, things do have a tendency of improving a bit, but instead the opposite is what happened, right? So July was a little bit stronger for Tesla, and then August ended up being a lot weaker so far. And that's because the market, if you look at SPY's data right here, or even like SPX, the S&P 500 in general, it tends to be weak during the month of September. September tends to be like a lot weaker for it. August tends to be a little bit less weak, but during this August through September period, we tend to see the market decline and then start doing a little bit better by October. And I think the market's following this trend. So when it comes to like seasonality and like the cycles, this is still holding up. For example, if you go back to like historical periods, such as like August right over here, you will notice that during the month of August, we tend to see the market slowing down a bit, July through August. Then around September, we see another decline like around September before we see some better price action approaching like October, November, and then December tend to be very, very strong. At least this is what this is suggesting right about here. So it's just worth noting, this is like the historical average change based off what we're seeing. We are seeing a little bit more shorting going on SPY so far. But anyways, now let's talk about Tesla. On Tesla, I want to just mention that from seasonality, we tend to see Tesla slow down during the period of August, actually approaching September. September tends to be a little bit weaker for Tesla than August. A little bit towards the end of August, we do see some declines, but September is when we tend to see Tesla slow down historically, and then it tends to improve a little bit by the end of the end of September, before it slows down by October, and then it starts pumping for November and December. November and December tend to be very strong months for Tesla, especially November for the whole markets. But let me just add that looking at the short sales volume, Tesla did see an increase in the short interest. Now, Tesla's short interest was declining. We saw some short covering helping Tesla pump a bit. And then at the very end, we started to see a very, very nice pump for Tesla. We started to see a pump in the short interest at the same time. And now, right now, the short interest is starting to go up again as Tesla's starting to decline. So it's like a vice versa move. And as shorts are starting to pile in again, we're going to be seeing if this thing starts spiking again. Because when this happens, we tend to see Tesla slow down quite a bit. Now, does that always have to happen? Not really, but there is a chance it could happen and lead to more selling pressure. Right now, we're starting to see an increase in the short interest. This is like the most significant increase we've seen since the last couple of weeks. So we will see if this happens to lead to anything big. Now, I will talk more about the markets. Let me just remind everyone that the market was still in quite a very, very interesting limbo state for some time, as the market was very choppy for the last couple of trading days. And now the VIX is starting to break out. It's actually above the 50-day moving average, suggesting that the market is becoming more fearful. And that's another bearish signal. So what are we going to be watching for in the markets right now? So like I said before on SPY, now we have a head and shoulders pattern. This was looking like it wanted to bounce and get back to these levels, but it ended up failing. So now this head and shoulders is becoming more valid. And this is likely going to bring us all the way down to 442 or lower very soon. If we continue to break to the downside, unless we don't, if we get a bounce, first off, we're going to be seeing if we could get above like 448 first. It might not do that. It looks relatively weak on 30 minutes, on the 4-hour as well. And that's going to be very significant. Now, as far as Tesla goes, Tesla's looking kind of weak as well. And we're going to be watching this next important level. So if the market does sell off more, right, we're going to be watching the 50 EMA on the daily chart. That's also very close to where our previous support happened to be. We actually went below this support right here. On the 4-hour time frame, we have a bearish signal. Tesla actually broke again and closed below the 200 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. That is another bearish signal, and it's starting to curl on the 4-hour, which suggests downside is very possible. But on the daily chart, we need confirmation first for a bigger break to the downside. Tesla's still holding above this support, very close to our 50 EMA, and that's going to be around 250 a share. Basically, 250 is what Tesla has to try to hold, very close to that. By the time we test the 50 EMA, it's going to be very close to 250. It is on an uptrend right now. It's currently at 249.63, but I think this is going to uptrend a bit. The daily MACD is looking bearish as Tesla's continuing to downtrend. So we're going to be watching, can Tesla end up getting a reaction off 250? If it fails to hold 250 and Tesla gets a rug pull, here's what I think is going to happen. Tesla is going to come all the way down to fill this gap, probably down to about 235 a share. And if we get more bad news, I would not rule out the possibility of 220, which is where our 200 EMA happens to be. Also, we have another unfilled gap down there. But people are asking me, what about the gaps down in the 100s? Is Tesla going to crash all the way down to like 140, 130 a share, all the way down here? The answer is it does not have to fill every single gap that's there, even though historically most of them get filled. It does not always have to fill everything, right? You could argue that, like Apple has gaps in like the tens, right? That means Apple's going to crash the tens. Well, that doesn't make sense because why on earth would Apple crash that low unless we get some kind of like really bad piece of news? And for now, I don't really see Apple at all crashing down to like $10 where some gaps could exist. It doesn't make sense, right? There's nothing fundamental to cause that to happen. And the same thing could be said about Tesla. I don't see how Tesla's going to crash all the way down to 100 right now. Unless something very bad happens, that's still a possibility, but it's unlikely. Now, I just want to mention to everyone, it's not really a fun idea to try to predict the long term. I'm going to talk more about Tesla's longer term in my video for tomorrow. And then I'm going to talk more about some very specific levels to watch for. But for now, I want to focus on the next level. And that's the most important thing to remember. Because there are always those people that come out and they say, oh, SPY, the market's gonna crash. It's gonna crash to new lows. Well, my question is, why would you focus on these October lows, which are way down in the 340s when we're currently in the 446 area? The market was just at 459 just a few weeks ago, right? We're nowhere near 340. And I don't see how the market's going to drop that low unless we get something catastrophic in the economy. I don't see that so far, right? I believe that this October low is not going to be retested. It requires something very, very bad for us to get back down there. And for now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it doesn't make sense to bring that up. Why would you worry about that if we're still at these high levels? SPY has not even broken below 440, right? It hasn't broken below 420, 400. So why are we talking about 340? Right? It just doesn't make any sense. The next level to watch for is going to be this low right here around this 446 area because this is where we had this gap that just got filled. If that fails, if we end up failing and we end up breaking below this support right here around this 445 point, what is this? 445 flat around there, that zone. If that fails us, it's going to come all the way down to fill this gap. And I think the odds greatly favor that now. We're going to see 442 soon, but watch for confirmation just to be safe. That's why I always talk about this. There is a gap above right here around 455. If you want to fill this gap, we have to see SPY break and hold above 453.5. We have to break that first for us to come all the way up there. So far, there's no sign of that, and it's looking more bearish. And that's what these technicals are suggesting, looking at the head and shoulders and the daily MACD. That seems more probable. Also, the stochastic suggests that. Now, looking at our current trend, I'm not going to focus too much on the other technicals. I'm just going to try to keep this as simple as possible. So for Tesla, watch 250. Let's see if Tesla could hold this. If Tesla holds 250, there's a chance it could try to bounce and fluctuate between our 20 EMA on the daily chart and around where our 50 happens to be, go back and forth and back and forth. But if it breaks 250, Tesla's going to get a rug pull. We're going to see Tesla drop pretty hard. So make sure you are prepared for that and make sure you are ready. Now, am I giving up on Tesla by saying that? No, I'm simply reading the chart that's in front of us. I am still a mega bull on Tesla for the long-term future. I think it's going to go to crazy, crazy high numbers and break all-time highs very, very soon. By next year, it's going to break all-time highs, in my opinion. And we're going to be waiting and be very, very patient in the process. Now, when I look at Tesla dropping, I see this as an opportunity to dollar cost average more, buy more shares slowly, and don't go like super heavy on buying shares right now. Not financial advice. I'm just saying this in general based off what I would do. I'm not buying like a crazy amount of shares right now. I would just buy a few at a time and wait for like the more bigger sell off to basically happen. That's very probable. And we're going to be watching for the test. If we could hold this, you could try buying there, but if it breaks below it, then you're going to be watching for new opportunities to start buying more for Tesla. And if I buy Tesla and this thing drops more, well, I'm not going to use money I'm not able to lose. That's the first thing to remember. Secondly, I'm okay with holding this thing. I'm okay with putting in money and letting it sit there for years because the profits to be made are going to be absolutely miraculous. Okay, so thank you all for listening. I want to make this video as clear as possible for everyone. Don't worry too much about what on earth anyone says out there about Tesla crashing to the 100 area. I know a lot of news is turning negative on Tesla. I mean, the news just came out today, and they were criticizing Tesla about how researchers jailbroke a Tesla to get into the free in-car features. And when things like this happen, it is important for Tesla to take advantage of this as an opportunity to find improvements, try to improve their cybersecurity systems. But the thing to remember is that this news has been coming out for a while with researchers and people hacking to Teslas and doing this and that. And Tesla's going to do its accordingly importance. And I do believe this company is still fundamentally strong because of their strive for improvements. And I'm still very bullish for the long term nonetheless. So that's what my point is. Now, for tomorrow, I'm going to release 2 videos on Tesla, maybe one or two, I'll see. I just want to mention something very important about Fitch, what's happening with the markets, and then talk about what I think could end up affecting Tesla towards the end of the year. Okay, so thank you for listening. Please have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla in the market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.